Awesome. All right, guys, I want to welcome everybody to the Weekly Pill. Purpose, Impact, Leadership, Legacy. This is episode 1, and I have a great individual, a great patriot, a great American all together doing outstanding things in his life. His name's Brad T. We'll just keep it at that. If he wants to share his last name, we'll let him do that. A brief bio on Brad. He entered the service in the Army in 1990 with option 40 Ranger contract. He completed AIT and Airborne School and immediately went to Ranger Indoctrination in 1991. He earned himself an assignment in B Company, 3 Ranger Battalion at Fort Benning. After being selected ahead of his peers to attend Ranger School and other advanced military schools in August 1993, Brad deployed to Mogadishu, Somalia as part of Task Force Ranger. While deployed, Brad conducted 7 combat operations, which last of which was depicted by the New York Times bestseller and major motion picture, Blackhawk Down. In the aftermath, Brad, one of the few NCOs to survive the engagement from his platoon, was fast-tracked into leadership positions and spent the next 2 years leading and mentoring new members of his platoon based on his experiences in the battlefield. In May 1995, Brad attended selection for a small specialized reconnaissance team in the 75th Ranger Regiment, known as Regimental Recon Detachment. In 1998, Brad deployed to Bosnia, and as the sole individual from the 75th Ranger Regiment to deploy in support of operations against persons indicted for war crimes. In September '98, Brad attended and successfully completed the assessment and selection course for Delta Force. And in May 1999, he attended the almost year-long OTC, Original Gangster Operation Training Course. In December of 1999, after successfully completing OTC, he was assigned to a sabre squadron where he deployed in support of combat operations a total of 8 times. Was involved in both the invasion of Iraq and the capture of Mr. Saddam Hussein. Brad conducted over 300 combat operations and was awarded numerous valorous awards. So Brad, welcome to the show, and I'm glad you're my first guest.
Dude, what I didn't know that this was the maiden voyage. So it's an honor to be here, and thanks for having me, dude.
Yeah, man. Yeah, just so everybody knows, I met Brad when I was working my last job as a government contractor. We were teaching combat skills, and I met Brad from some of the other work that he was doing, and he's just always been such a professional, but really just always built teams wherever he goes. And I think you're the kind of guy that likes to find common denominators with everybody you meet.
Yeah, I think that it's weird because I have these different contacts all over the place, and it's like I'll meet a person at a trade show that I'm attending, or it could be wherever, and you instantly click with like-minded people and the people that are in the same kind of zone that you're in. And I've always found that interesting. It doesn't mean that we have to be like shared veteran experience, or it could be anything, just start talking to a guy. I saw a guy, ran into a dude in Tampa, Florida, and he was walking by and he looked familiar. And I walked up to him, and I don't do this. I'm like a kind of stick to myself, except for when I have my posse and we're out having fun or whatever. But I walked up to him and I was like, "Hey, man, do I know you?" And he looks at me and we're like, "I don't know." And we just started talking, and next thing I know, he started talking about this new bass guitar that he was buying, and he showed me a picture of it, and it was the same color of a guitar that I just bought. So it was like this weird thing.
Boom.
And we started talking like, yeah, just weird out of nowhere. Just like, hey, what's up? And we click. We still text at least twice a week.
That's
and
cool,
have only hung out like maybe 3 times ever in 10 years, But anyway, I make connections like that, man. You find good people, and you keep the relationship going.
Yeah, of course. Well, I think to add to that too, with your experience, that I just read about, your experience taught you that, I can't predict what tomorrow's going to bring, because Dude, you guys rocked out in '93, man. I mean, you guys put in the work needed, and you could not have predicted that to happen probably when you pumped out on that deployment.
No, definitely not. I mean, pretty unexpected, and it wasn't something like, I don't think anybody knew what we were getting into, and I don't even think at the highest levels, like the president on down, I don't think that they had any idea of, what was going to happen and the way things would play out.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I remember in '92, I think the Marines were there helping with humanitarian, and one of the guys I used to work with was the AAV guy, and he was there when I was doing recruiters assistance. I worked under one of the recruiters, and he was there in '92, and he's like, "Man, when we rolled out, we couldn't have predicted it, how bad it got either. It just happened." Yeah. So let me ask you a question about, like, for you as an individual, where do you feel like you, and I know there's going to be different probably waves of this throughout your life, where did you find your purpose for what pushed you to do the things you've done in life? What helped you get that purpose and find that purpose?
Interestingly, so like I grew up, being a soldier was never in the deck of cards. Like, it wasn't really, I think that it was always super innate. Like, my dad bought me toy guns, and, I played cowboy and Indian, which probably isn't PC to say right now, but that's what it was called when I was a little kid. And, I don't know, it was never really a thing. It wasn't something that I wanted to necessarily do. I wanted to play music. And I started at about 12 or 13, I started reading books about Rangers in Vietnam and CIA in Vietnam and studies and observation group and stuff like that. And that's kind of where, like, some of the interest came from. But really, I joined the service as kind of like not as a last resort, but more like, man, what do I do now? I've run out of things and I'm going nowhere. And, oh, hey, remember that thing you were interested in back when you were 12 and 13? That's literally kind of where it came from. So I didn't feel like through the service that I was really looking for that fulfillment or purpose. I think I was just on my path. And it wasn't until I separated from the service after 20 years that, oh, hey, that thing that I did for all those years and sacrificed and everything else to be, it's gone. And, where do I find purpose now? How do I find something that's as important as what that job was, Yeah. And so that, for me, that's where, and I didn't really struggle with it. I know a lot of people struggle a lot more than I did. I didn't really struggle with it, but I don't feel like I was looking for purpose until I separated from the service.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, and I'll just share briefly about my experience as a Marine. So I spent 6 years total, a little bit less than half of that on active duty, the rest on reserve. And when I got out of boot camp, within a year, I was in Fallujah, Iraq, right outside waiting for the battle. So I was a young Marine, but I joined when the Iraq War started. So kind of knowing what was going on, I wish my 20-year-old self would have had a better idea what, hey, be advised.
Yeah.
It's about to happen. So, but it's interesting to think about your military service. For me, I wanted to join the Marine Corps, not because I was the first Marine ever in my family, not because, the dress blues or whatever. What it really came down to was the Marine Corps just felt like the team that I felt like I needed in my life as a young man. Where guys like you, I mean, you get to do stuff special operation wise where you got to be a solid individual first before you can even be on this team to be on that kind of element. You got to be a strong dude to make those teams. I wasn't that at all. I was just a young kid that was trying to find a team that I could be part of, and the Marine Corps gave me that. And there's definitely a lot I wish I did more of, or wish would have done different. And like you said, once you leave and get out, that's when you realize kind of what you're missing and what's physically not there in the present time.
Yeah, no doubt.
So if you could share with us a little bit about like the impact that your service, but now outside of service, what you're doing is made for you and also the small community that you're in, but also the bigger picture community that you want to support?
Let's see. That's pretty wide open.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess after seeing a number of people that I knew that were struggling after separating from the service, and some of them were some really like the smarter guys, full bird colonels, you know, people at that level that were really kind of struggling with, you know, what do I do? And man, I don't really know. And anyway, I don't feel like I was, me personally, I don't feel like I was struggling a lot because I never fully identified as like just a Delta Force operator. I always felt like I'm more things than that. And to just say that I'm good at this one thing or that's my whole life, I never felt that way. And I think that that's something that they're even like counseling dudes on now. It's like, don't just identify as this thing, because at some point in time, you're not going to be able to do it again or do it anymore. And anyway,
that's a good
so
point.
After seeing some guys and talking with people struggling and seeing enough of it, I started going back to the unit and talking with them about, you know, hey, there's a problem. You have guys that are really struggling, and, you know, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm not a therapist or a qualified suicide, you know, prevention counselor. You know, a lot of people come to me. I think I have the kind of personality that lends itself to, you know, listen to people and talk with them. And anyway, it started to kind of anger me, where it's like, why is this happening? And why isn't somebody doing something about it? And I can't do anything about it. I can just go talk to the leadership and talk to the command group and, you know, try and point out things that are happening and things that are going on to try and help rectify the situation. But, you know, I don't want to start a foundation. I don't want to, you know, do something else, because I feel like there are already a whole lot of good things out there. And as a result, it was kind of like, well, what can I do? Music's always been a huge part of my life. So why don't I'll do this music thing, and I'll take the royalties, you know, from selling music, and I'll give those to charitable organizations that support the veteran and first responder community. And that's basically what I did.
Yeah. And so guys, real quick, this is exactly why I wanted to bring Brad on too, because he has an amazing military career. And then after that, he has not done anything but continue to just shift forward and grow to a whole nother dimension with the music background that you originally had before. And now, last year I had a fundraiser. He was the first person to hit me up and said, dude, my band, we're going to put money out for you guys. Boom. And I mean, just the importance of you are supporting people that are hurting, and you might not even know them directly, but you guys are out there using music as therapy, supporting charitable events. You know, our charity was for a reunion. We had our 15-year Battle of Fallujah reunion last year. And, you know, that money went to buying guys plane tickets and hotels to come. And it's just incredible. So real quick, Brad, I'm going to put it in the show notes, but talk about your band and you guys, and also your band members.
Yeah, pretty interesting. So about the same time that this idea came to me, and really it was my wife. I've got like this room full of musical gear and guitars everywhere and stuff like that. And my wife said, you know, it's a real shame that you're not doing something with this. And so a couple days later, the light bulb went off, and that's when I kind of thought the whole thing up. And the same week that the light bulb went off, my buddy Jason Everman, who was the guy that was in Nirvana and Soundgarden prior to joining the Rangers in 1994, he's a good buddy of mine. He was coming into town into New York City, and we were going to go catch a concert together. And it was like, I know, that's like, I need to talk to Jason about doing this and see if it's something that he's interested in. And so we were having some cocktails before checking out Mastodon and going backstage and getting to hang with those guys and stuff like that. And anyway, hey, do you want to do this? And he said, absolutely. So that's kind of where it started. I stood up a social media page, and kind of from there, it just grew organically. So a couple months later, one of the other members of the band, Tyson Stahl, who was a former MARSOC officer, he hit me up and just out of the clear blue, I was like, yo, man, I don't know what you got going on, but I want to be a part of this. What can I do to help? And I was like, well, do you play any instruments? He's like, play the bass.
He's like, I'm a Marine. That's all that matters. I'm a Marine.
Yeah. I was like, I won't hold that against you. But anyway, he says, well, I play the bass. And I'm like, okay, well, cool. Let's hang out sometime and see where it goes. And anyway, it just kind of grew organically from there all the way to the point of another former Marine who's our producer, Josh Gudwin. He's, multi-Grammy awards, just got nominated for like 7 more Grammys. The dude is absolutely crushing it in the music industry. And he's A-list producer. He hit me up and was like, yo, I'm down to help. What can I do? And so anyway, that's kind of where it started and how it started to grow. And, it just continues to grow. And there are a lot of people that have helped out along the way. And without them and other great guys like you out there, getting the message out and things like that, like it just continued to grow way above our expectations.
Yeah, I mean, and I just saw today you guys got a wiki page, I guess, finally established. So that now you've hit like a pinnacle point.
Yeah,
that's awesome, man.
Like, it was awesome. One of the things where it's like, what do you have to do? And the next thing is like verification on social media. That annoys me to no end because I don't feel like the social media platforms are big on blue checking veterans. But it's like, okay, why does a band that has like 2,300 followers get a blue check? Because they've got an album out. Like, okay, well, I've got an album out and, way more followers than that. And, why no blue check? I've had fake accounts, people trying to be a one or all of us, or people trying to be the band page, and it's annoying.
Yeah, I'm sure. And again, that's part of the beast that comes with it, where, man, it gets overwhelming too, because it takes away from the direct focus of what you want to have with your energy that you have time to incorporate into your vision.
Yeah, like I don't get into politics and stuff like that
no, heck no.
I don't feel like with what I'm doing, I don't feel like dividing people, whichever side of the fence you might fall on. It's not like, this is something that should bring people together,
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, it's sports, it's whatever. Like, let's not put politics in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and especially, guys, you way more experienced than me, but, being battle tested veterans, you and I both, we have friends that we have to live for as well, and like I like to say, they live through us. And, coming home and making sure that whenever we're having a tough day or things are frustrating for us, like, I always think about them and like, what little bit of energy could I suck from them right now and use right now to help this situation I'm in be better and not so emotional. Because easy to get emotional, but when you think third person perspective and step back a little bit, you can kind of handle things a little bit more professional.
Oh yeah.
So,
and I think the military lends itself, military and service industries in general, whether you're a police officer or firefighter, I don't think anybody, like, we don't care who's on our team. It's not, color is immaterial, political preference is immaterial. It kind of doesn't matter. And we just do the job. I didn't do my job any differently with a different president.
right.
When Bill Clinton was president versus George Bush versus George Bush Jr. versus Obama, like, it didn't matter to me. I'm still doing my job to the best of my ability for my country.
Right. And that's what's important, man. We're gonna have a lot of guys are stepping up in the veteran community now too, to help out Link, and create that bond again. And I call it like service outside of uniform, where a a lot of us that serve, you have that servant heart, and it stays with you even once you put that uniform in the closet.
Yeah, very much so.
So I got a question for people. So what's the vision for Silence and Light? Do you guys see yourself putting once COVID kind of hopefully dies down a little bit and we can get back in person? Do you guys feel like you want to start doing shows, or are you going to keep it more virtual? You guys
we'll definitely do some shows. We had a handful of things, probably 10 things that were lining up pre-COVID, and once COVID hit, then that kind of put the old kill switch on that. So we had a special benefit that we played last year with Lenny Kravitz in front of about 5,000 people. That was kind of like our first ever show
awesome.
together. Not that we each haven't done stuff individually, but as a group, that was kind of right off the bat, like, wow, okay. Yeah, so we had some USO stuff that we were trying to sort out and kind of schedule and all that stuff, and a few other special benefits. We had some shows in North Carolina, another one in DC, and all that stuff kind of went away. So where we are now, since we couldn't do any touring or any performances during COVID, we just went back to what can we do? Instead of doing nothing and complaining about it, what can we do? Well, I can continue to write music. And so album 2 is basically completely written, and we're just waiting, on the schedule, to line up with studio and everything else. But that'll start right after Christmas and go through the first couple weeks of January, and then should have the next album out in time to be able to really support it and get behind it and play some shows next spring. So I think by April, May, it's looking about when we'll release album 2.
Sweet, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. I think what's important too is that, music, especially like being in a military, unit, it's like you have that one guy. Every platoon has that one dude who always brings his guitar everywhere you guys go. I mean, I think you guys also doing what you're doing, you're tying together with that link, we feel like common denominator I mentioned before, where music's an easy way to bring people together. And especially doing it the way you guys are doing it, where you got Jason in there from his experience. You got 2 Marines, so you're even like a joint service band as well.
Yeah, it's like 2 Marines, 2 Army, and 1 Air Force, but there's no Navy guys.
Yeah, that's all right.
Non-intentional Navy guys.
You can find a corpsman anywhere.
Yeah, it's interesting because the way we go about it, really is like a military team. It's like a small team. And, the bands and the music stuff that I was in the past, there's always, I think artists in general are super kind of quirky people, and they don't want to be told that their baby's ugly when their baby's ugly. And, for me, it really doesn't have anything to do with that. It's like, I want to make this as good as it can possibly be. I don't half-ass stuff. And I'm a jump in headfirst kind of person for the most part.
Yeah.
And so I don't, like, we don't have time. We don't literally have enough time when we rehearse and get together to like argue about every single part of the song and whether somebody thinks it could be this or, it's not my way or the highway. Like, I'm not Dave Mustaine from Megadeth or anything, but we have a collective, I write the music, we get together, we run through it, and, everybody adds their little pieces and parts, and we kind of hone those things in. But it's very much like a team. It's like, we can argue with the team leader every step of the way with every instruction that he gives us, or we can say, all right, like, he's got a vision, we're going to support his vision, and that's kind of the way it goes. So it's interesting. And I think what we end up with is good stuff,
Yeah, that's cool. I like that idea because I get it, man. I get it completely. Where you guys come from an industry where, and you talked about the Grammy Award winner producer, where on the outside with his other clients, he's probably dealing with a lot of that drama that you mentioned that you guys don't have at all, because you're bringing in this professional perspective from service, from structured teams, and realizing, okay, we can sit here and waste a little bit of time, or we could be efficient and just get this knocked out and have a blast.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
the very first song that we recorded with him, he was like, I want you to change something. I want you to go right into the vocal right after this, all together part. Like, don't let it fade. Just go right into the vocal. And I was like, that's not the way the song was written. And I really wanted this thing to kind of settle in, and then the vocal starts. And it was like, okay, this dude's testing me, and he's seeing if I'm willing to, like, let's come together.
Yeah.
Can he take constructive criticism? And I was like, yeah, man, let's do it your way. Cool. And it just worked. From that point on, there really wasn't a whole lot that he, changed or directed us to do differently, or, little tweaks here and there and things like that. But it was kind of like a test.
Yeah, I love it, dude. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And obviously it was like, okay, sweet, let's keep moving forward. Next.
Yeah, exactly.
So that leads me to my next kind of, staying with the Weekly Pill acronym here. So like that already kind of talks about leadership in its own, where you guys you have this identity where you're all separate individuals, but you come together, and that team, it almost leads itself, it seems like.
Yeah, it does. I mean, there's not a whole lot of, we're all the type of people that our brains are thinking like, hey, tomorrow we need to be up at this time so that we can get together by this time, so that we can break by here, so that he can get on the road. Like, our brains are kind of wired for that already. And there's not a whole lot of, oh, we slept in and missed the flight, and there's not a whole lot of that. And I think it's, our common experiences too. It's like, that's one of the things, that's the unintended thing that I didn't really know was going to happen, was kind of like the music ended up being a lot darker than what I thought it was going to be. And it's heavier stuff. And I don't mean heavy like metal versus pop, but more like it's darker, heavier stuff.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting to see that, because that wasn't intended to like, hey, I'm going to write this song and it's going to be really sad. It's just kind of like, that's the way it came out, like I added my part and kind of gave some ideas for the way I thought it should go. And we ended up with lyrics that kind of, were something that, I don't know, it stuff isn't intended. It's not like I'm going to write this song and I want it to sound exactly like this song.
Sure.
It never works that way. When everybody adds their stuff and tells you why they can't do it a certain way or whatever, you end up with what you end up. And then recording it, it's even worse, because you have an idea in your head of what this thing is supposed to sound like, and it never quite gets there. It's like, it's close to the way I heard it in my head, but it's missing some of those things. So like, you have to be involved with it, well, the entire time. It's not like, let's just write a song, go in and record it, and then we're done. Every step of the process requires your supervision, and at least making sure that, people aren't going off the rails the wrong way with your stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think to just, for me to add something to what you just mentioned, it sounds like the flow part of you guys, when you blend together, obviously, the human brain, we like to predict things before it happens. It's one thing we're good at.
Sure.
But you guys, like you said, it ended up being what it is right now and what it leads to. It wasn't what you thought and you visioned in your head, but it probably just feels natural. And like you mentioned the word before, organic. Like it's just growing its own way. And the cool thing is, you guys bring, like I said before, bringing your services into it. Who else is doing what you guys are doing in the music industry?
Yeah, I think that there are a handful of people that I didn't know were veterans necessarily. And like, people will send them to me like, hey, check it out, this guy's doing your thing, or, this guy is doing the same thing you're doing, that kind of stuff. But I didn't know of anybody that was really doing it. And that was kind of one of the things where, part of this too, it's not about, I try to have this conversation with myself a lot. Like, this isn't about me or my ego or my success with something. I feel like I'm representing the community from which I came from. And I take that very seriously. So if I'm doing something stupid or, something that's unprofessional in a way where other people view me as that, then I'm doing something wrong. So I'm putting my best foot forward. I'm doing this to the best of my abilities, with everything that I've got and the constraints that I have. I take that pretty seriously. So I feel like what I'm doing is, to the music industry, I'm trying to let them know that, like, yeah, man, like, I'm representing this community, and we as a band are representing this community and this group of people. And it's not just veterans, it's first responders, it's doctors, it's whomever, anybody that's giving and sacrificing and putting themselves out there to do a job. I'm trying to bring our stories forward. It's not just my story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You guys are, very talented guys, and in bringing that energy into that music. I mean, it's some good music, man. You sent me some samples, and it's like, my wife's like, "Who's that?" And I was like, "Don't worry about it." I'm just messing you out.
Some knuckleheads.
Yeah, she's going to share it with the world. But no, dude, that's awesome. I do want to add, if you can kind of reflect back to your time as a young soldier, what did leadership look like for you? Like, what kind of leadership did you get developed, and what leadership built Brad, in your service time?
Interesting, because we were talking about this before we were recording, right? And there are some people that are natural leaders, and some people that are natural followers, and some people that don't fit into any category. When I got to the Rangers, it was a very much like a yes sergeant, no sergeant, getting hazed all day, that kind of thing. And a lot of the people that were leaders then, I didn't necessarily respect, just because they had a school that I didn't have, or they had a promotion that I didn't have. But I respected their rank because they could do things to me, and haze me and stuff like that. But I didn't necessarily respect them as leaders. And it wasn't until I saw, like, leaving the Rangers and going to the Regimental Recon Detachment, it was like, now it's all NCOs. It's all a team of E5s, E6s, and maybe an E7 team leader. And maybe not, maybe an E6 team leader and a whole bunch of E6s. But, like, we got to grow our hair out. There was no more rank. It was more, hey, Brad, hey, Jeff, hey, Jim, that kind of thing. And that's when leadership really starts to kind of get difficult, because there's no more, hey, MFer, I said do this because I'm an E6 and you're an E5. Like, you can't operate in a small team like that. And so that's when I really started kind of seeing leadership in more of its challenges than anything.
Sure.
How do you lead a bunch of guys that are all like A-type, hard charging, do the right thing guys? And then going to the unit from there, similarly, there's no rank. I was an E7 on a team. I think I was like the 3IC or 2IC on a team. It's like an E7, and there was an E9 below me on the team. And it's like, I'm more senior to that dude by a couple of years. So it doesn't matter that our rank has nothing to do with it. Anyway,
Awesome.
I feel like every leadership position, like, you could kind of tweak that for what it should be, right? Like, you need that team leader, and I mean, like, infantry team leader. So like E5, E4, E5, hard charger, like you need that guy. You need that guy putting a boot in the private's ass 24/7. That's required. You have to have that, especially in a unit that has privates. You know, like once you get to different layers and levels, it needs to change. You don't need that style of leadership. You need another style of leadership. And so the Rangers, I felt like, was a great building block in terms of, okay, I know what it's like to be treated a certain way and have to do things because of somebody's rank. It's another thing to earn the respect of the men, and they do the things I say to do because they respect me. And that's a completely different style of leadership. So,
yeah, and you know what I love about that, because I mean that's perfect, man. I wouldn't even have guessed that's where you would have gone with this, with that level. But I just recently was thinking about, I was listening to, Jason Redman, Navy SEAL. He has a book out. He got, I think he got blown up in late 2000s, and he came out with a book, and he's just, he was very vulnerable, shared his whole story. But I was listening to his podcast the other day, and he talked about leadership being a lot of it you, and it made me think of a whole new way to look at leadership. With leadership, to me, it's not about what you can get others to do at all. There is a level of that needed where it's like, hey, persuasion, you need to do this. How do you do that the best? Well, you need to make sure your communication is pretty solid, and that what your message you're putting out, others want to actually use that to build off of, instead of making negativity the leadership perspective.
Right.
But I was thinking of recently, business, like leadership's like a business to business relationship. However, as an individual, like for me, I need to be 51% ownership, and everything else I support needs to be 49%. As in, I got to show up with myself first, especially when I'm on a higher level team or doing more things outside of the normal, initial phases of a team. Once you start growing in a team, a lot of it's how you show up to life first before you interact with your team.
Sure.
So self-ownership, self-leadership, because a lot of people see what you're putting out. Like you mentioned, that you respect that billet, but not that person, because there's something in that person that you don't respect. And it's probably the fact that they're trying to get you to do something that they're not doing themselves.
Yeah, it could be.
Could
be. It's one of those things where there were other guys, as a young private, and seeing these dudes that had jumped into Panama, and were 18-year-old kids, and now we're E5s and 20-year-olds. And I came in at 21, so I was already older than they were. And a bunch of those guys I respected the hell out of. And, they had been somewhere, had done something, had proven themselves, and they weren't the same type of dick, team leader screaming and yelling for the point, that was the guys that hadn't been there.
Yeah.
And so it's like, why are these guys so aggressively angry, and these other guys aren't. And anyway,
it's one of those famous lines, you guys like to use, special ops: exposure creates composure.
Sure.
So go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. You probably saved me from going down another rabbit hole.
So how was it? So real quick, that was something new. So your NCOs and your guys you came in under just got off the battlefield down in Panama.
Yeah.
So that's a product of your environment, that you became a product of their environment. Is what molded you for what you later saw.
Yeah,
What
definitely.
What did you learn? What did you learn from them? Maybe not even like you could even tell back in '93 that you learned from them, but what later in life did you realize that you learned from them that prepared you for your combat?
I don't know. This is a conversation that I was having with a buddy of mine the other day, and he posted something on social media, and I jumped on it and commented, but it was really like, was it harder back then, or is it harder now? And so the new kids that came in after September 11th think it's harder now, because
I can still hear you. Your screen went blank.
Okay.
It's all good. Keep going. All right, we lost Brad for a minute. We'll let him jump back in.
We'll try it again.
Yeah, I got you. We're back on.
Hold on. Do you have it? I'm flipped.
Yeah, you're flipped. It's all good. That'll keep me dizzy, man. There you go. All right, sweet.
It's like I have to like reset it and then I don't know what happened.
No, it's all good. Hey, carry on.
So where was I? I was saying
we were talking about your guys, the Panama guys. Kind of just my question to you was, what really helped your leadership for you later in life? You were talking to your buddy recently on social media posts. That
there you go. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Ding, ding.
Yeah. Okay. So, the new guys are like, well, you can go to combat right away now. And so it's harder. And I brought it up to him that there was no real combat then. There was no sustained combat then. Okay.
Right.
So you can't hold it against a group of people that never had a chance to prove themselves in combat when there is no combat. Okay. So the interesting thing to me was that the majority of the people that were in Mogadishu with me were all non-combat veterans, but our mentally and physically demanding training is what gave us the advantage. Okay. So it didn't matter that we weren't in combat every day.
Right.
It mattered that we were physically and mentally really challenged. I can say, in terms of like physically demanding, the training was by far harder than anything I did in combat.
Sure.
Sure. And even some of it mentally was more challenging than things that I did in combat. Like it was a constant, and so I feel like I can say that because I've lived both. I lived pre-war military. I joined in 90.
Yeah.
And, by the time I got to the Rangers, it was early 91. So I'm a brand new private in April of 91. I didn't see combat until, 2.5 years later. But everything that I did in training prepared me for that. And I was successful in leaving the engagement alive and leaving a lot of dead guys on the battlefield. So I don't think that you can compare. I think it's apples and oranges,
Yeah, and I agree 100%. I mean, and me being in the Battle of Fallujah as a young boot, I picked up Lance Corporal, I think 3 months before the battle. I was super boot. I was in boot camp the year before. But I will say, like you mentioned, training, like that's like the world I'm in now. Training is the one investment that any organization truly has control over. And it is an investment because what you put in is what you'll get out, because training is your default setting for the unknown down the road.
Sure. And I talk to people all the time that are like, my police department doesn't get training for CQB. We don't have the ability to pay for, X, Y, or Z. And it's like, man, last I checked, like walking through the parking lot in a patrol type of, or movement to contact, or bounding overwatch, that's free, man. Like you can do that stuff for free. It doesn't cost you anything.
But you guys absolutely.
But you guys don't know how to do it.
Yeah. We even did that when we couldn't even get to Mountown. We would do that at San Mateo, right there at the Cristianosos gate at Camp Pendleton. We'd be on the compound there, just out there in the road, dry guns, doing bumps, doing bounding movements, like right there, right by our barracks.
Yeah. CQB with engineer tape all day long.
Oh yeah, tape.
All right, let's do another CQB run. No blanks, no nothing, just the mechanics, you know?
Of course.
And, but anyway, that type of stuff. So anyway, I don't think that I answered your question fully, because you asked like what leadership, you know, or what prepared me for things later. And all I would say is that definitely challenging training, mentally and physically challenging training, is one of the things that was a key to success, you know, for the unit, for me as an individual, for others around me. And that I don't feel like, to say that you have to go to combat to get that same level of stress required to make things muscle memory or hours of repetition or anything else. Like, that's just kind of like taking the exam, right? It's like, you don't go to college and just take exams. You do everything up to, and the exam is like 1/100th of the amount of work that you do in college, and probably 1/1000th, but it's everything else that goes into it. And
yeah, I like to say, you know, we want life to be long, and hopefully it will be, but life is a lot of days added up. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's showing up every day, and I wasn't always there. You know, I'm the kind of Marine that I was assigned a pet rock to get accountability over the rock, to help me get accountability over myself. It was PFC rock my squad leader gave me. I had to have it in formation every time we were lined up, you know, to look out for me, and it worked. I'll never forget PFC rock. You know, I love the fact that, you know, like guys like you with a career in special forces, you just kept growing and growing, and you kept that growth mindset. It even looks like now in your personal life, because you know, I haven't seen you in so many years physically, and I've only seen you, like that guy you mentioned before, like maybe a handful of times in my life. And that was just supporting our job down there with some other things that you do. But what's important, man, is that you got a big heart. You don't forget, but you're also like, you got so much stuff that you've been through that I think it's made you the person you are now, where you're just so open and creative, you know, from your past experiences.
Yeah, I think that helps. I think at some point you get to a level of like, I don't give a, you know, crap about whatever. There was something that you were saying that reminded me of something, and now I'm not recalling.
It's all good. Yeah. We're just fill and flow, you know. It's like white tape, engineer tape.
Exactly.
So how about, if you don't mind me asking, because this is going to be crazy, and if you think of that thought, just interject it whenever. So you got 2 band members that are Marines. You got two guys that are Army. You said 1 Air Force. All right. You got to tell your Marine band members that me, in 2003, as a Marine at boot camp, guess what movie our senior drill instructor had us watch to say, look, the war in Iraq started 2 months ago, gents. Stand by. What movie do you think that he had us watch in boot camp that wasn't Marine related?
Rocky.
Blackhawk Down.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Now I can only imagine you've seen that movie and not being there specifically. But our drill instructor was so adamant about, we're going to watch this. He goes, I don't care. It's Army guys. He goes, this is combat. This is the imperfect. This is why training is what matters. We literally sat there. I couldn't believe it. We watched that whole friggin' movie. It was the first time I ever saw it, actually. But so if you got to tell your band members that, first off, a Marine in boot camp got to watch Blackhawk Down.
They'll be like, you went through it easy.
Yeah.
I think they're younger than you, so I think they may have gotten the same experience and not shared with me.
Yeah. Well, 1 was an officer, you said, so he definitely had it easier at cadet school.
Yeah, I think he came in 2004, 2005. 2003, 2004.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, do you mind sharing with us a little bit about like on the battlefield in Mogadishu? What was that? did you guys have intel that, did you really know the battlefield space at all? Did you own the intel game yet? Or was it just literally, I'm in someone's streets, backyard that I don't really know at all?
So I think that at every different level, you probably would get a different answer from people. I was soon to be team leader, E4, E4 promotable. And I can tell you that with the amount of time that we had from the time that things would spin up to the time we were rolling to go do our thing, that there wasn't a whole lot of time for the Rangers to do the usual, 2-hour long op order, to the nth detail of everything. And anyway, so what happened really was like dissemination of information was pretty much didn't happen. We didn't sit in intel updates, nightly. We didn't get that kind of information. So if it wasn't disseminated down through the ranks, then we didn't really have any information. The thing that I could feel from the battlefield was that every time we went out and did something, and we got in other gunfights prior to October 3rd, there were a couple of other pretty significant gunfights, and that's never really been talked about. But I could feel the tension kind of building each time we would go out. It seemed like it was just a little more tense, and these guys seemed to be a little more, raised in a ruckus, and then a couple of RPGs go flying by, and it kind of felt that way. Nobody on that day ever said like in the movie, "Hey, we're going to a bad part of town, prep your guys." Like nobody ever said that. It was just like
Hollywood.
We're going here, and you guys are orienting, the target building should be right here behind you, that kind of thing. There wasn't a whole lot of information. And then, I think people take for granted too that now everybody has a radio, everybody has hearing protection, everybody has night vision, all of that stuff. And like that didn't exist back then.
Oh,
it
yeah.
wasn't,
Yeah, sure.
So you're running around doing stuff, and it was so violently loud, you couldn't hear what anybody was saying unless they were right next to you screaming in your ear. No commands were really being given. No information was being disseminated, because you can't stand in the middle of the street with bullets flying all over the place and, put out the information that needs to get put out so that everybody knows what's going on.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I don't feel like the movie, at least from the Ranger perspective, didn't really portray. And I understand that the movie had to portray a number of different characters and kind of combine it into one, kind of thing that made sense. But yeah, it was a complete nut roll in terms of information flow and just not knowing anything really.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, I mean, it's I'm actually glad that I brought this up, and I hope you're okay with talking about it. Me being in the Battle of Fallujah, where I was an attachment, I was a breacher. My original job before that, primarily I would be route clearance with sweeping for IEDs, like the best job ever, right? And so like I loved being dismounted though. I had never liked being in a vehicle when I was out in an urban environment ever. Just because you're a big area target. But dismounted wise, I mean, like I said, being the Battle of Fallujah, it was planned out. We were just online Marines soldiers. Boom, sweep the city. We knew what we were doing, and we had about 10 days to do it. Is what the generals and colonels had planned. But that was our planned mission. It was overt and planned. But you guys, were you one of the groups and teams that had to go firm and stay out for the night?
I was going back and forth.
Were you?
Yeah. So even that, like, I didn't know what we were doing. I thought we were loading up and going home. And it turns out we were driving somewhere else, and driving to that somewhere else turned into one ambush after the other.
Yeah, because no nods, no NVGs. You're using.
Yeah, this is during the day still.
Okay. Yeah.
So, didn't know why we were loading up or going to another place. We were just going to another place, and then Then I see some dead Americans, and I'm helping get them out of the street and putting them into the back of a vehicle. And then we're going somewhere else, and another ambush and burning tires and like running people over with our vehicle. And it was just stuff like that. It wasn't hey guys, here's what's going on. There was no time to disseminate information.
Yeah, it was all reactive to what
Yeah.
you were given in your environment.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. I mean, that's, man. Well, I appreciate you sharing that part, man, because I really want to make sure that, especially with your experience and what you've been through, and also you were a promotable sergeant at that time, so you were also would realize too that that's kind of a squad leader's kind of element in the urban settings. That's where squad leaders really take over, and they are the most important part.
Sure.
Because that's how you feel and flow, and hasty just kind of switches on like that. And squad leaders have that knowledge of their team to get people moving and get them mounted up or dismounted quickly.
Yeah, I don't think that, for us too, and this is a completely separate and much longer conversation, but like my platoon was not, we got tasked with being the vehicle package after we had already done the rehearsals as the air package. And there was a little bit of some, ass kissery happening, and our platoon leader, being a prior enlisted 1st Ranger Battalion, Grenada and Panama veteran, didn't suck up to the company commander maybe the way that others might have.
Sure.
And so we got put into a different mission. And actually, that's not fair to say. I don't think that there was a suck up happening. I think that there was just some falling out between RPL and the company commander. So my platoon, which had never done anything vehicular before at all, got assigned that literally in Mogadishu. So our privates that were drivers and people assigned to vehicles like this, we had never done that before. We were a jump clearing platoon, which meant like the Rangers' bread and butter mission is airfield seizures. So we were the guys that jumped onto the airfield. And then once we cleared the airfield, the airplane would land and offload the vehicles, the Ranger vehicles, to go out and set up blocking positions. So the 2 other platoons in our company, not our weapons platoon, but the 2 other assault platoons, were like, that was their sole job, was Jeeps and bikes and stuff like that. So to be given that also, at that time, it was kind of like, we don't know what we're doing. Like, I don't know vehicle crew drills. Like, I wasn't a private that grew up with that. I grew up jumping onto airfields. Like, that was my whole thing. So anyway,
yeah,
a lot of that played in. So that's what I mean. And like, leadership happens, stuff happens at all different levels. And some of it, it's predictable. Some of it's not predictable. I think.
Yeah. No, go ahead, man. I'm sorry. I was going to say something about leadership.
Don't go ahead. You got it. It's on the brain.
So one thing that made me just trigger now another element, because I'm very passionate about leadership, and I really think it's an overused term, almost like the term expert out in today's world. It's like when people say they're an expert, I always say, says who? It says you, like, are you qualified? Is it a qualification? Like, you shot expert? Awesome. Like, hopefully you'll get it again next time when your qual's up. But to me, leadership is really, it's about team. Like I mentioned before, that business venture, and I think like the stuff that you probably saw, that you experienced, and that I did on the battlefield, where it's all about what relationship was developed prior to this now present engagement that helps us together as a team get through it. Because that's where leadership matters, is what was in the past, and what developed relationships helped us to get to this moment now.
For sure.
Because that's where the trust comes in, and trust is so connected to a team and leadership. Yeah.
I had, like, using Mogadishu as an example, I had faith in my entire chain of command. There wasn't anybody that was like, oh, I can't trust him because he, there wasn't any of that. And I had been there long enough at 2.5 years that I had proven myself. I'd gone to Ranger School, had started to get groomed for leadership position and sent to jump master school and some other stuff. So, I knew these guys and had been like, it was a lot of the same people for the same 2.5 years, minus the privates that would constantly come and go because they're quitting or you're making them quit or, they're getting hazed until they quit or whatever it might be. But anyway, I had faith in my entire chain of command. It wasn't that I couldn't trust something that they said. It was that there was just no information being given at all. And there wasn't a format for information to be relayed. So that in itself could have been something that we maybe could have determined prior to hitting the ground that day. Like, how do we go about getting, disseminating information? Never once were we in a situation where, like, SOP could have been, if we start taking effective fire to the point that we're gaining a lot of casualties, like jump up, get over the wall, get inside, secure that building, let's Alamo up, and at least we'll preserve lives. Like, we may have to adjust our exfil or things might, change, but like that was never ever talked about. The thing's kind of like thinking ahead. I think the military in general does a horrible job of looking in reverse. And it's like,
I agree. Reflection doesn't work that well.
I got in the Army 91 and I got issued green jungle boots with a spike protector because in the 60s in Vietnam, that was an issue, like, think forward, we didn't issue soldiers desert colored kit prior to Iraq after we had been in Afghanistan for 1.5 years.
Right. Yeah. The Coyote. I was the first one in my platoon to get Coyote. The boots got Coyote flags. Everybody else still had the Woodlands. And we still a lot of guys deployed with Woodlands in 2004. You're right, dude. That's a great point. So
that's something that I always felt like as a military and as a leader. So as a subordinate, when I'm looking at my team leader and he's just putting out the plan, and my wheels are turning, and they're going like, "Oh, why would we do it that way? Why don't we do it this? Like, this is a smarter way of doing something. Why don't we wait until night? Why don't we?" It could be anything. It caused me a lot of problems in the military because I feel like I may have overthought things or maybe thought faster than other people were thinking of things.
Yeah, man, I get it. I completely understand that. Go ahead. Sorry.
And then this is the thing that I forgot earlier, and that was, and it's kind of unrelated now, but it's something that I wanted to share, and that is when I got to Delta, I was like, I am never leaving this place. I will serve here until I can no longer serve, and I'm 90 years old. It's like going to work at Disneyland, right? Like, all the greatest gear, all the greatest everything, the best facilities, the best food in the chow hall.
Yeah, you're the pro. You guys are the A team. You're the varsity team. You get the attention and the spotlight. You get it all.
Absolutely amazing place to work. And after maybe 2 or 3 years there, I was like, okay, what next?
Yeah.
And it was a very unfulfilling feeling that, like, I had reached at least what I viewed to be the pinnacle of special operations, and was really kind of unfulfilled with the whole thing. And so I started looking at guys. So, like, when I got there, there were dudes that had 16 years in the building and 18 years, and they were like, man, that guy's been here like 14 years, And it wasn't until I was there for about 3 years, and that's when I was like, what is this? Sounds wrong. It's just the only terminology that I can think of. What is wrong that these guys don't want to go challenge themselves with something else? Like, why is it that they are happy just staying in the same thing, the same cycle, the same training cycle, the same everything. It's just this repetitive thing. And that's another thing that was like an indicator to me that like I'm not necessarily like everybody else here, because I was there a handful of years and was like, okay, done a couple of combat trips now too. And I got there way before the war started. So I had a few years there without war and without deployments, and then a couple with, but I don't know. I felt like I'm just stagnant. Like I need to do something new. I need to challenge myself in some other way. What other selection can I go to? Where else, you know? And then you get to a point where you're like, well, I'm at 16 years in the military, and you know, I got 4 years left. So do I get out? I even contemplated that, and had offers to go do cool stuff with Secret Service or, you know, whomever. And I don't know, it just, at that point it becomes like, well, I got to stay in or it wouldn't make any sense, you know?
Yeah, sure.
Anyway,
there's definitely, you know, what I like about what you said, Brad, is that, you know, the visionary part of you, like you've had this, you're a visionary where you see the future, or you see other opportunities maybe that your peers aren't tracking on like you are. But part of it probably too is why you are what you are. Is you're like an entrepreneur, man, and a mindset. It seems like too, knowing you just kind of have that creative mindset where there's just a lot of different things that you want to have on your plate at different times. Because that's how I am, dude. I work for a very large public service organization now, full time, but I have my own business because I need something else, you know.
yeah.
And I do a lot of
Really,
volunteer work. I do a crap ton of volunteer work. But go ahead.
yeah, that's really what the band thing was too. It's like I get a pretty tremendous sense of purpose in some of the other things that I do, and giving back to the community, whether it's charitable contributions to different organizations or whatever it might be. But I get a lot of fulfillment from that, but it wasn't a personally fulfilling thing. And so that's why I'm doing, like, this is where my heart is, you know, absolutely.
Sure.
It's what I'm passionate about. I always get roped into the same thing where it's like, hey, talk about, I feel like Uncle Rico, right? From like, I don't want to keep talking about, like, if we just spent, you know, 2 hours talking about music, I would be totally happy with that. I don't need to talk about my past. It's a necessary evil in terms of, like, a lot of people know me that way. A lot of people find that, you know, interesting and everything else. And it's a part of where I came from. So it's a part of me, but that's like one part of me.
Yeah,
and,
sure. Yeah.
You know, so everybody wants to know, like, what was it like here? You know, and the kids hit me up on social media and like, wow, it must have felt awesome to make it, you know, and like, yeah, I mean, not really. It's selection's an ongoing process, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
anyway.
of course. Well, no, I mean, dude, I get it completely. You know, for me as a young boy, I switched schools. My parents divorced when I was 10. I switched schools from 5th grade to 11th grade 6 times. Schools or divisions, you know. So, and I bring that up because part of the purpose part for me, like I mentioned before, is in the Marine Corps. I love sports. I played sports, but once I started moving around, I didn't get to play like I did before because I just, you know, I didn't have the chance to. Well, let me go get on this team because I live here now. But once I got in the Marine Corps, it was like that team that I needed for so many years. I finally got, and it didn't make my experience, you know, going to heavy combat right away as a young Marine. You know, I could have easily died like some of my buddies did, and I'm never going to say anything, but all I can do is live every day appreciating the sacrifices others made for me and all of us to continue on, because somebody had to be there. But that definitely makes me who I am. And as I go through life, if I forget that, you know, and I lose that element of what made me, you know, and life really is about experiences, you know. like 1% of our experiences are the ones that we remember. 99% of them, you know, it's like, oh crap, I forgot what I did yesterday. I forgot what I had for breakfast. But those 1% are the high waves and the low waves, you know, the low dips. But
hey, so those people I was telling you were on their way here are here now.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to skate either that, or we can hit pause and we can jump back on in about an hour.
No, that's good, man. I think we got a lot covered. And the last thing I wanted to say real quick, if you could just cover, like, what does legacy mean to you for just a big picture perspective, and like kind of what legacy do you want to leave on the environment that you've been exposed to and had an impact on?
Man, that's a tough one, because it's like, I don't want to be remembered for what I was yesterday. I want to be known for what I'm doing today.
Yeah.
And so when I meet people, one of the proudest things, I'll meet people and they're like, "What? You were in Delta Force?" Like, they have no idea. And I'm thankful. Like, I don't want to be that guy that's wearing it on his hat, you know? Like,
let's run around.
Yeah. So to me, legacy is kind of like, it's a twofold thing or a two-pronged sword, I guess, where, you know, yeah, I want to leave my mark and leave an impression and make sure that I do the best that I can with something. At the same time, like, I want to be constantly thinking and moving forward, not wallowing around in the sorrows of yesterday or in the glory of yesterday. Like, today's a new day, man. What can I do? How can I help? You know, what can I bring to the table and be a productive member of society and everything else?
Yeah, I love it, man. That's awesome. I'm very similar. The growth mindset for me is, you know, it's like how I do my workouts. I write down my workout that I'm going to do tomorrow, today.
Yeah.
So it's at least one thing I can look forward to. And if it's like the most, you know, lame workout, it's still something I get to look forward to and check off to continue to grow forward. But I appreciate it, man. Your time is valuable. You're a busy guy. You got any social media plugs you want to put out where people can find you, where they can look for you guys?
Yeah, it's Silence and Light music.com or Silence and Light Official on Instagram and Facebook. And my personal stuff is, let's see, I'm getting a low battery thing here. Brad Thomas Official, I think, on Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff. So if you go to the main wherever, just Google it and you'll find us, because we're all over the intranet.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, Brad. Hey, man, I'm going to put your stuff in the show notes that I'm going to post. This on my YouTube channel. Just getting started, like I said, episode 1 of the Weekly Pill. This is to bring guys and gals in. My first season will be combat veterans, because I really want to work in that industry and get people moving forward outside of what we experience on the battlefield.
Yeah.
And continue to grow when we're back home. So, hey, brother, I appreciate your time, and we'll catch up later.
Yeah, thanks for having me, dude, because what you're doing is a tremendous service, too. So thanks for what you're doing.
All right, Brad. Thanks, dude.
All right, man.
Later.